Divorce lawyers and people who went through it? What is the most satisfying example of a difficult spouse finally facing the consequences in court? A woman suspected that her husband was cheating, but he denied everything. His lawyer repeated that there was no affair and insisted that she had imagined the entire situation. Her legal team found charges from a private club. The husband claimed that the charges were a mistake and said he had never visited the place. Then, during the dispute, he received a traffic ticket for leaving a parking lot without signaling. The parking lot was reserved for customers of that exact club. Even better, the car was registered in his wife's name, so the ticket was mailed directly to her. He had denied being there while producing official evidence that placed him at the entrance. After that, his lawyer became much more interested in reaching an agreement. One husband spent 5 years rejecting every proposal his wife made. He objected to the house, the savings, the furniture, and even routine paperwork. Every time the lawyers came close to an agreement, he introduced another demand. He believed that delaying the divorce punished his wife. In reality, he was also wasting the court's time and increasing the legal costs for both sides. Eventually, the judge gave him a final deadline. He could accept a reasonable division or explain why he should not be held in contempt. The agreement was finally completed. Normally, the legal fees would have been divided between the spouses. This judge assigned every remaining fee to the husband. His plan had been to make the process expensive for his wife. The final order made him pay for the delay he had created. A couple had already worked out a private child support arrangement. The mother accepted much less than the standard calculation because she wanted to avoid another court fight. The father still complained whenever she asked for diapers or school supplies. Convinced that the amount was unfair, he filed a case to have the payments reduced. The judge reviewed both incomes, the actual custody schedule, and the child's expenses. The private arrangement had been extremely favorable to the father. Under the official calculation, his required payment was almost twice as high. The mother had tried to give him an easy agreement. He rejected it because he thought a courtroom would give him something better. Instead, his own filing replaced a generous compromise with a much larger legal obligation. During one divorce, a husband claimed he had almost no money. He said his business was struggling and argued that there were hardly any assets to divide. His wife knew that he and a business partner had moved money into accounts and transactions they believed she would never discover. Her lawyer collected the records and presented them in court. Judges do not appreciate someone hiding marital property while asking the court to divide it fairly. The hidden funds were included in the case, and the wife received a far larger share than the husband had expected. According to the lawyer involved, he would have kept considerably more if he had reported everything honestly from the beginning. He tried to protect his money by concealing it. The concealment became the reason he lost so much of it. A man refused to pay child support for years. He moved frequently, ignored notices, and behaved as if the obligation would disappear once his children became adults. Much later, he discovered that he qualified for several tax benefits. He filed old returns and provided a current bank account so the refunds could be deposited directly. Those filings reactivated a support case that had been waiting for updated financial information. The account he had just provided was identified, and collection orders reached it before the refunds could help him. He protested that his children were no longer minors. The answer was simple. Becoming adults did not erase the support he had failed to pay while they were children. After years of hiding, he led the system directly to his own bank account. One father demanded equal custody because he believed it would reduce what he had to pay. His former wife explained that he had rarely participated in the children's daily lives, but he accused her of trying to keep them away from him. In court, he gave a long speech about being an involved parent. The judge asked him for the children's shoe sizes. He did not know. Then the judge asked for the name of their doctor, their teachers, and their favorite subjects. He could not answer any of those questions either. His daughter was attending a photography camp that week. He had signed the permission form, yet he still claimed she had no favorite subject. The final custody schedule reflected who had actually been caring for the children, not who delivered the most confident speech in court. A husband left after his wife received a serious medical diagnosis. They had no children, and he had discouraged her from working throughout the marriage. When treatment became difficult, he said he could not handle the situation and filed for divorce. He expected to leave with most of the property because he had earned the income. The court considered the years in which his wife had maintained their home, depended on his financial decisions, and lost opportunities to build an independent career. She kept the house and received enough of the marital assets to continue treatment and rebuild her life. He moved into a small, rented home. He had treated her illness as the moment when she became inconvenient. The court treated the marriage as a partnership whose obligations did not disappear when one partner became sick. A woman wanted a quick divorce after years of emotional and financial control. She offered a settlement that gave her husband more than her lawyer thought was fair, because she wanted the conflict to end. He interpreted the offer as weakness. He rejected mediation, demanded more property, and forced the case toward a formal hearing. Once the lawyers examined the finances, they found retirement benefits and other marital assets that had not been included in the original proposal. The judge approved a division that gave the woman substantially more than she had first requested. Her husband was also ordered to cover the legal fees she had spent responding to his tactics. He could have accepted the generous offer. By insisting on a fight, he paid for the lawyer who uncovered everything he had hoped to keep. One divorced father took his former wife back to court every year. She was self-employed, and he was convinced that her business deductions meant she was hiding income. Each year required new documents, legal preparation, and another review. She repeatedly offered to keep the existing support arrangement just to avoid the expense. Eventually, he filed during a year when his own income had increased and hers had fallen. The official calculation moved in the opposite direction from the one he expected. He left with a higher payment and another legal bill. The court had never promised that reopening the calculation would benefit the person who requested it. He treated the annual hearing like a chance to punish his former wife, but the numbers did not care who had filed the paperwork. A father claimed he had lost his job and asked the court to reduce support. His former wife believed he was still earning a large salary, but he insisted that she was inventing the accusation. The case became so dishonest that an unexpected witness finally intervened, his own mother. She provided records showing that her son was employed and earning more than $250,000 a year. She cared about her grandchildren and had become tired of watching him lie about money meant for them. His request for a reduction failed. The false financial claims also damaged his credibility on every other issue before the court. He had expected his family to protect him automatically. Instead, the person who knew him longest brought the documents that ended the argument. One man hid foreclosure and eviction notices from his wife until their family was forced out of the home. She left and filed for divorce, but he avoided every attempt to serve the papers. He moved between friends, refused to answer the door, and seemed proud that the process could not continue without him. The law allowed another method after documented attempts at personal service. Notice was published through the required public channel, and the case proceeded, even though he refused to participate. He eventually discovered that avoiding the papers had not prevented the divorce. It had removed his opportunity to respond before decisions were made. He believed he could stop a legal process by refusing to acknowledge it. The court did not require his cooperation forever. A divorcing couple argued over custody for a very unusual reason. Neither parent wanted the responsibility they believed would come with taking the children. Each attempted to convince the court that the other parent should receive full custody. The judge listened until it became clear that they were treating two children like financial disadvantages. He finally said that, if neither parent wanted them, he would arrange for other adults in the courtroom to take responsibility. The parents suddenly understood that the argument was no longer theoretical. After a recess, they returned with a complete custody agreement and a plan for supporting both children. The judge did not need to punish them financially. He forced them to hear what their positions actually meant. Once the language changed from money to losing their children, the fight ended quickly. A husband left his wife and two children, both of whom required lifelong assistance. Through his lawyer, he argued for no support, no contribution to medical costs, and as little responsibility as possible. His wife had spent years providing full-time care and had very limited income. She was using hired rides to reach medical appointments, while her husband and his new partner remained in the family home. The judge reviewed the children's needs and the financial history. The final order included substantial support, medical coverage, the family home, and reliable transportation for the parent taking the children to their appointments. The husband's new relationship ended soon afterward, and he complained that his former wife had ruined his life. Everyone else could see that the court had simply assigned the responsibilities he had tried to abandon. During a custody dispute, one parent accused the other of being dangerous and requested an emergency protective order. The allegations were serious, but the messages and records did not support them. The accused parent offered supervised visits and a temporary reduced schedule while the claims were investigated. The other side refused every compromise and demanded complete control. After several hearings, the judge reviewed the full message history and heard testimony from both sides. The dramatic accusations became less convincing each time they were compared with the actual records. The protective order was dissolved. Visitation was expanded, and support was calculated from the real custody arrangement. The person who had demanded everything left with less control than the temporary compromise would have provided. Refusing every reasonable option had forced the evidence into a courtroom. A spouse destroyed personal belongings, sold vehicles that were still disputed property, and repeatedly ignored orders, allowing the other person to collect what remained. When the court intervened, the behavior continued. There were unwanted visits, harassment, and violations of a restraining order. Each new incident created another document, another witness, and another reason for the judge to doubt every promise. Eventually, the violations resulted in time in custody. The house she had demanded also came with a mortgage she could not maintain, and it was later lost to foreclosure. The other spouse did not need an elaborate revenge plan. He kept records, followed the orders, and allowed the pattern to become visible. She had tried to control the divorce by making every step chaotic. The documented chaos became the strongest evidence against her.